He said it like it was nothing, like he'd rehearsed it in the car on the way over, which, based on what I found later, he had. Dad told me, personally, verbally, explicitly, that he wanted me to have controlling interest, 66%. Those were his exact words. I watched the attorney write it down. I felt the pen in my jacket pocket. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I pressed my thumbnail into the pad of my index finger until I felt the edge of the nail. I held it there. My father had never said that. I knew it because on September 22nd, 2022, he called me. At 6:48 in the morning, we talked for 41 minutes. I know the duration because I still have the call log. I know what he said because I wrote it down that same morning, time-stamped 8:14 a.m. He told me by name what he wanted done. He told me he was worried my brother would try something after he was gone. His words, not mine. Marcus looked at me across that conference table and smiled the way people smile when they think they've already won. I smiled back. I hadn't started the folder yet. I started it that night. My father died on October 14th, 2022. He was 71 years old. He left behind a holdings company, 4 commercial properties, 2 residential units, net equity of approximately $2.3 million. He left behind 2 children, my brother Marcus, 49, and me. The will divided the company equally, 50-50, written clearly, witnessed properly, filed with the probate court 3 years before his death. It was not a complicated document. Marcus made it complicated. The verbal amendment claim was the first lie. He told it to the estate attorney. On November 3rd, 20 days after the funeral, he delivered it with the calm, practiced authority of someone who had mapped it out. I know the exact date because I was sitting across from him. When I got home, I opened a new folder. I named it November_03_2022. I knew what he was doing. What I didn't know yet was how far it had gone. Here is what was at stake. Controlling interest in a $2.3 million company. Marcus could vote to issue new shares. He could dilute my stake below the threshold that would trigger board protections. He could install himself as managing director, and then offer me a buyout at whatever depressed valuation his accountant could construct. He didn't need to steal outright. He just needed the control percentage. Everything else would follow legally, quietly, and with a paper trail that pointed nowhere. I also understood why he couldn't simply ask me to agree, because he knew I'd say no. I thought about confronting him. There was no version of November 3rd where I walked back and said, "That is not true, and here is my call log." But a call log is not proof. A memory is not a document. I had watched Marcus operate long enough. He had already built his version of the story. A confrontation would only tell him what I knew. It would give him time. It would put me on the record as emotional instead of factual. I needed more than the truth. I needed it packaged. I closed the front door, sat down, and started building. The folder architecture took me 2 weeks to design. The root folder was titled Estate_Reckoning. It contained 6 subfolders: financial, communications, legal, audio, discrepancies, and timeline. Every file I added was named with a date prefix. Every entry had a corresponding row in a master log. A spreadsheet I updated each time I added something new. By the end of 18 months, the log had 312 entries. I backed up to 2 encrypted external drives and a private cloud account registered under a name Marcus did not have. I ran the update cycle every 2 weeks. Every time, without exception, the financial documents came first. Marcus was already managing the accounts as de facto executor. What he failed to account for was that our father had added me, a quiet administrative addition. Marcus never knew it existed. I logged in, exported the statements, and started reading. What I found was not dramatic. It never is at the beginning. Between October 14th and January 31st, $43,000 left the account. 11 separate transactions, consulting fees, management assessment, facilities review. all payable to Grayline Advisory Group. I looked up Grayline Advisory Group, registered October 28th, 2022, 14 days after the funeral. Marcus's wife's maiden name is Grayline. I did not confront him. I opened the financial subfolder, created a subfolder titled Grayline_LLC, and saved every record. The communications took longer. My father had given me the password to his email account 2 years earlier. Marcus didn't know. I found two things that mattered. First, an email from July 2022 in which Marcus asked to revise the will for 66%. My father's reply was 4 sentences long. The final sentence read, "I've thought about it. The answer is no. Equal is equal." I saved that file. Second, an email Marcus sent to the estate attorney on October 31st, 17 days after the funeral. The relevant line read, "As we discussed, Dad made his wishes clear." As we discussed. That phrase told me everything. The November 3rd meeting was not the first conversation. There had been a prior meeting. I was not invited. I was not informed. I saved that file. There were 2 close calls. Marcus called me in June 2023 and asked if I'd thought about looking at the bank accounts. I told him I hadn't. My voice was level. I had accessed those accounts 11 times by then and saved 47 documents. The second was harder. I ran into the estate attorney at a coffee shop in July. He mentioned Marcus had suggested a path forward, a structured buyout at a negotiated valuation. I felt my jaw tighten. I felt 7 months of documentation pressing against my teeth. I said, "Tell Marcus I'll be in touch." I went home and added the conversation to the timeline folder. Date, time, location, filed. By month 14, I had everything I needed. By month 16, I had more. I waited anyway. I was waiting for a specific number. The Grayline payments. I needed the total to cross 6 figures. On March 3rd, 2024, it did. $107,500. I updated the discrepancy sheet. Then I started building the file. The trigger was not the money. Marcus filed a motion, requesting formal recognition of the verbal amendment. Attached was a signed declaration, under penalty of perjury, stating that our father had communicated his wishes to Marcus in September 2022. He listed a specific date, September 22nd, 2022. The date of the 41-minute call. The call my father made to me. The call I had documented in notes time-stamped 8:14 a.m. Marcus had not simply fabricated a conversation. He had taken the date of my father's call to me and filed it as the alibi date. He built his lie on top of my evidence without knowing it existed. I knew it was time. I spent 11 days building the case. 847 megabytes. 312 pages when printed, organized into 6 sections, 12 paragraphs, 0 adjectives, nothing but dates, amounts, and verbatim quotes. The cover document opened with a single sentence. The following materials document a pattern of misrepresentation. The distribution list had 7 recipients: the court clerk, the attorney, the CPA, a board member, our uncle, the Delaware Division of Corporations, and Marcus. I sent Marcus his copy last. There was no cover note, no statement of how I felt, 1 line in the subject field, estate_reckoning, documentation for review. I hit send at 11:47 p.m., then I closed the laptop. I made tea. I sat in the dark and felt the stillness of something that is finally finished. Not triumphant, just complete. My phone rang at 12:23 a.m. Marcus. I did not answer. 12:31, 12:44, 3 calls in 21 minutes. At 1:06 a.m., a text from Marcus's wife. I set my phone face down. The estate attorney called at 8:52 the following morning. He said, "I received your file. I need you to come in." His voice was different. He spoke to me like someone who had just read a case. The probate motion was suspended within 2 weeks. He withdrew the verbal amendment claim 11 days after that, voluntarily. He has not called me since. My uncle called and said, "Your father would have done the same thing." I'm not certain it's true. Here is what I lost. I lost a brother. I lost 2 years of weekends and evenings to spreadsheets, keys, and exports. I lost the version of this family where none of it happened. Here is what I recovered. My share of my father's estate. An attorney who now takes my calls differently. A paper record, 312 pages, that documents 18 months of deception. Estate_reckoning is still on my desktop. I haven't deleted it. I earned every file in it. 18 months of silence is its own kind of work. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I didn't give them a moment they could use. I documented, and then I sent the file.